Hello. As we embark on this road to your final project, we focus in on three main aspects of context that build one upon the other. The first of these contextual aspects is the game setting. Game setting is the basis for all further aspects of the game context. So the game setting is going to start off by picking a place, a specific city or town that exists present day or existed in the past and is researchable. The context that we try to develop within that particular space of that town or that city that you pick is going to be built with these five elements: an environmental element, a mental emotional element, a cultural element, a social element, and a technology element. Context is not only important as the basis of our game, it's also important as a consideration in any type of art form. And context should always be thought of as being balanced out or balancing with the content. And content is where we've been putting most of our attention to this point. Let's go ahead and take a look at the form that you have to fill out for the game setting. In the game setting form, I'll make it a little larger right here, you'll notice that you have some links at the top, and it tells you to use the database tools for your APA citations, and it gives you these two links, and it gives you a password right here for our particular access to the history and context database. Now, we are also given a very clear rubric for scoring because these assignments here are a little bit different than your content assignments. Your content assignments you can see in the game if they actually perform or not, and you can see whether they're in the code properly or not, whether they have an error and so forth. So those are quite apparent whether you got them or not. This particular assignment and the subsequent assignments on context are not going to be as apparent, and that's why we have these guiding rubrics or these scoring rubrics here. So if we look right here, we can see how it is broken down in terms of awarding the points, formative points for the particular assignment. Now within the scope of context, we look at this 360 degrees pie that we looked at earlier, and we are going to be identifying elements within all of these sectors of context. You first of all start off with your first and last name. You'll have the city or town anywhere on earth that you can pick. The time of your reference setting, it should be a decade or a specific year. And then you start identifying particular elements. An environment element that needs to be supported by one or more citations in the APA format, and likewise other elements including a mental emotional element, a culture element, a technology element, and a social element. Let's go ahead to this first link, and as we do, it brings us over here to the digital main library and to the US history, and you can change it between US history, world history, or both. I want to search actually something based upon, rather than starting with an actual place in mind, I am going to suggest it's a good idea to think what element is going to be maybe the most demanding to or hardest to find. Maybe it's going to be different for you than somebody else. So I'm thinking over here, maybe the cultural element. So an example of a cultural element includes daily routines, rituals, celebrations, and events. So, and a celebration could also be tied to the mental and emotional element as well. As you can think of, that's, quite obvious. A lot of times at celebrations, people are joined together in a mental and emotional state. So that's where I'm going to start. You kind of use these elements as you see fit and develop your setting. Develop your setting. You don't have to come into this thinking of a particular city or a town. Just look at this as, just a way of devising or coming up with your setting. You don't have to do the first one first and the last one last. I'm looking at culture and I'm looking at mental emotional elements. I'm saying celebration. I'm going to look up celebration and see what I get. So here I am searching celebration. Let's see what I can get here. Whoops. Let me go back and make sure my login is valid here. There we go. Now I'll go in here and type in celebration and search. Okay, there we have celebration right here, an ineffable celebration, another celebration, celebration of marriage, all these different celebrations. Here's Louisa May Alcott, a primary source. I always like to read primary sources of information that were in the first person, oftentimes written in the hand of usually people who were there, right? And that's what I'm talking about with primary sources. So here we have Louisa May Alcott, a primary source, and this is an essay she wrote back in 1875. And we can see right here, she is concerned about women taking part in the Concord celebration, the centennial celebration in Concord, which would be Concord, Massachusetts. And if we read down here further, we can see Boston, because Concord is in the greater Boston area. And we can see her essay here and get a feel of the celebration and the culture going on at that time. So this looks very promising. Concord, Massachusetts is a possible city or town, and the cultural piece being the celebration, the centennial celebration, which would have been in 1876, right? Because 1876 is 100 years after 1776. So that makes sense. We would have the centennial celebration. Let's look at what we have so far according to our game setting. So if we were filling this out, hey, we could have just decided right then, of course, you put your name in here, and then you put down your place. So maybe your place would be like this. This is my place, Concord, Massachusetts. And the time. Well, actually, here we have a specific year that we could use, or we could use that decade. Let's actually go, I'm going to go with 1876, which is that actual year. And we have over here, now we have the burden when we identify these elements to put in APA formatted citations. So let's look at that. Culture, celebrations. So that would be Concord Centennial Celebration. And let's go ahead and follow that with the proper citation. So if I go over here and I go to Citation Tools on the side, click Citation Tools. If I change the drop down to APA, now I have my APA citation, and I can put the citation right in here. And if you read that, so I got the citation. If we read this, we can see right here in the text, it's identifying, okay, the context. Well, this is actually 1875, so maybe I'll make 1870s because this was written in advance of the celebration. So let me make it 1870s. See how I'm going to edit this to make it totally work, because we can have a decade or a specific year. But she had written this the year before 1876 and 1875. So we can easily just fulfill our obligation by mentioning that we are going to do the 1870s. And this definitely is placing this celebration in this particular time and place. So we have one citation here that successfully, so this citation, excuse me, successfully places this element, this Concord Centennial celebration, in that decade at that particular place. And that's what we need. That's what we're looking for from the citation. The citation, if you can't do it in one citation, you may have to use two citations. You might have to have one citation to put something into the right place and another citation to put it within the right time frame. So that's why it's citation or citations. And you go through the same process with all the other cultural elements. What if I wanted to do an environment element in Concord, Massachusetts in the 1870s? So if I look for an environment element, what's a building, for example? An environment element could be buildings. It could also be different elements of nature, which would have been the same throughout that entire century, right? Certain elements in nature would be there. So if you wanted to have animals as part of the elements, you could. Vehicles in the 1870s in Massachusetts. So you can also look at vehicles and consumer products that would have been present. Here's a lot of things. So let's just look up, what if we looked up Concord, Massachusetts? Oh, there we go. Concord, Massachusetts, and search. Well, we have Paul Revere's Ride, and that was going back 100 years before. And here we have a history, American history throughout a geographic overview. That might be good with some of the, especially since we're including, right, geographic, doing an environmental thing. So let's take a look at that one. So, and this is just giving us an overview here of Concord, Massachusetts. And it's talking about the significance in the 1700s here, Cultural Revolution, and over here going into the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Let's get up into the time period that we're really looking for. So here's the 1800s. This is where we're looking. So the time of Ralph Waldo Emerson, another very famous person, would have spanned that 1870s. That was 1803 to 1882. So let's see what else we have here. You don't just want to jump at the first thing. Don't just try to answer the questions and just to get it out of the way, but try to look at this. And we can see over here, Concord Hills Burial Ground. So they had a burial ground that was obviously of significance right here, and they're talking about this burial ground. Burial grounds are very significant. They're reminiscent of our culture, our rites and rituals, and it brings people together and remembering, especially in this case, a lot of people that lost their lives in the war there. So if we look at this particular Concord's Hill burial ground, maybe that would be a good, and it's not putting it right there in the 1870s, but what if we look, maybe we did Concord's Hill burial ground, and maybe we found another reference to it elsewhere, but this looks like it actually could substantiate that as a particular place, particular feature of the environment. So let me go over to APA for that. So copy that. So Concord's Hill Burial Ground. That sounds like that could be really good. So over here, maybe put in this case, Concord's Hill burial ground. And what if I just copied that and did a search only on that, see if I had anything else that I could identify in this database. So if I just put Concord's Hill burial ground, let's see what that brings up. Cemeteries in Concord, Massachusetts. Well, we've seen that. Burial ground. Cannonade at Bunker Hill. And this is a 1999. Looks like they might have referenced that there. So hopefully this process is kind of going to be a fun investigation for you. I'm just really excited about this. I'm going to kind of stop the video here now, but hopefully you see how I'm using the database, how I'm obtaining my evidence, my evidence of, that. So if I go back to, for example, over here, right, I use that APA citation. I click Citation Tools, move over here, APA. I know I already did this, but I'm just going to copy that again just to highlight this process and put the citation right in there. And there we have a citation. It's definitely placing the burial ground in Concord. It's kind of sketchy whether we're saying that it's still there in 1870. It doesn't specifically say it, but you can use inference as well. If it's pretty strong inference that something is in a particular place or time, then we can give you credit for that as well. But this is the process we go through. So for each of these elements, make sure you realize that you don't have to pick the place and time first. You can just start researching the database and come up with your place and time after you explore. Enjoy the process of exploring. Have a great day.